So this is what they're calling the British Fallout.
Which I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this. It really should not be called British Fallout. This is British Stalker, and I mean
Okay.
that completely affectionately, even as a someone who's more of a Fallout fan. I got suckered in by the Fallout comparisons,
Yeah.
and I can kind of see what they mean. Like, I mean, in the sense that okay, it's a post-nuclear whatever story, but it's in the UK. But when you're playing it, you'll very quickly realize this is nothing like Fallout. I mean, the combat's completely
Ah.
different. Just the feel of it, to play it. The fact that you're just dumped in an area completely directionless and everything's trying to murder you and it's absolutely brutal. Um, no, it's definitely more Stalker than Fallout.
Okay. It's kind of the alternate history thing, right? Because this is based on a true event.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's based on, I believe the premise is, what if this happened but worse? So
Mm.
basically, you've got a large portion of the Lake District in England has been quarantined off. Now, I can't say much about the story because I'll get to this in a bit. It's very hard to figure out where to start or what's going on.
Mm.
But from what I could piece together, this the Lake District has been quarantined off from the outside world. You wake up as an amnesiac with no knowledge of you were an outsider. You're now not an outsider. You're in the quarantine zone, and you don't know how you got there. You don't know how to get out again. I believe that is your aim, is to get out eventually.
Mm.
So it does seem like, okay, what if the British government had to quarantine this area because of nuclear fallout?
Gotcha. And is it like sci-fi fantasy-ish, like
It's
Fallout?
like, I think a lot of my responses are going to be like maybe
Oh,
because
okay.
it's so it's more grounded than that, I'd
Yeah.
say. It's, and again, this is where I think we stray away from Fallout a little bit. But there's some weird stuff going on. So
Right.
I guess for a specific example, the first group of enemies I encountered are called druids, and that's what people around the villages called them. I don't know what they call themselves, but they are
Mm.
basically like a cult that worships something to do with nature, and they are going. From what I was told, I'm not sure how reliable the NPCs were.
Yeah.
They are becoming sort of mentally unwell because of something in the air, possibly nuclear related.
I see.
And people who get infected with it are sort of going blue. And I found one person who was friendly enough to talk to who was like this. That's about as weird as it got. I'm not sure if there's actual any magic going on. Again, I
Okay.
didn't get. I played for about an hour and a half, and I still feel like I am barely scratching the surface of what is going on. I mean, and I was
Mm.
talking to people after I played, and I found out stuff that they hadn't got to. They found stuff I hadn't got to. Like, I can't stress enough just sort of how much you're just left to your own devices, just to
Yeah.
figure out, okay, what's your motivation here? Like, what do you want to do? How are you going to approach it? And that's, yeah, for better or worse. Like, if that's your kind of game, that's
Interesting.
great.
Yeah.
But
So that's not a symptom of this like weird press event environment where you're just kind of dropped into the game. Like you're saying that's what the experience is supposed to be.
yeah, so I've played it twice now, and
Okay.
both times, I think the first time was like I was actually at the opening of the game. That was at Gamescom last
Mm.
year, and that it does, because I mean you're playing as an amnesiac, so your character knows nothing about what's going on, so therefore you don't either.
Yeah.
People ask you questions and you can basically be like, yeah, I don't know. And it very much seems like that's, I think a lot of the things that might sound like criticism about Atomfall
Mm.
are also just things that I feel like are there by design. um so I can definitely tell, to get to Fallout, one of the inspirations for the game, according to the game director Ben Fisher, is Fallout New Vegas,
Mm.
and I can kind of see what he means there. In that, you wake up, you can possibly find a friendly face who's like, maybe do this if you want to. I don't know, do what you want. And then if you want, you can try and do what every New Vegas player does and make a beeline to Vegas itself and then get killed by death claws. And you're like, okay, maybe I won't do that. And
Yeah.
then you kind of naturally are guided into the safer route with all the story stuff. Now, Atomfall doesn't do that as gracefully, because I woke up and the first thing I see is some druids, and I'm thinking like, okay, I'll try and talk to them. They kind of tell me to back off. I inch a little closer. They all slaughter me, and I suck at the combat. So I mean, you'll see it in the gameplay. Like I die
Yeah.
so quickly, and then I'm like, okay, let's try this a few more different ways, and they just keep killing me. They keep killing me. So then I'm just sort of that my first, I want to say, half an hour of the game is spent sort of not really like sort of learning, but very much like dropped into the deep end. Um, I'm sort of just like bashing my head against various walls, trying to see if one of them will let me access the story, and eventually I end up stumbling into a village with NPCs who won't try and murder me, and that's when I finally got some story stuff. And I know people at the preview event didn't get to that at all. They
Oh
were
my
just stuck
gosh,
in this
yeah.
wasteland of people trying to kill them, and therefore they had no idea what was going on. And that was after an hour and a half of playing. So it's very it's trying to do that New Vegas thing of like saying like, okay, you can do what you want, but like if you just sort of wander where the quest markers are, like you are probably going to be killed. You should probably pay more attention to your surroundings. But at
Right.
the same
Okay.
time, like I don't feel like I'm not saying I want to be told exactly what to do. I just feel like there could be more of a graceful way than saying, hey, maybe try this path instead of just
Yeah.
having to try and try and try and die about 10 times before you figure out what's going on.
And that's sort of the hallmark of the survival genre, though. I mean, a lot of these games I've played, from like Ark, Survival Evolved, and Don't Starve. Like the first hour, at least, it can be pretty brutal as you get your bearings, and it seems like it's definitely supposed to be that way.
Yes, I completely agree. The survival stuff is funny because from what I could gather, there wasn't, and I've looked this up since, there isn't like a. You don't have to look after like your hunger, your thirst, or anything. The only
Mm,
thing you have to
okay.
look after is your health. And you do have a blood pressure thing as well. You have to keep an eye on, otherwise your vision goes blurry and stuff. But like apart from
Oh,
that, that's. But
interesting.
it is, as you said, it is a survival game in the sense of you are surviving.
Yeah.
And this it's a very simplified survival, but that kind of feels like misrepresenting it because it is difficult as hell. And if you aren't being careful, and this is one thing I did like about how it works, is that I was paying attention to my surroundings way more than I would in like most open world or open zone, technically I
Yeah.
think this is games. I was actually, after a while, like, okay, I'm not going to trust the lying marker in the corner. I'm actually going to look at street signs. I'm actually going to look at like where paths are. I'm going to look for where cover is. And in that sense, like that's like the gameplay and the narrative's like sort of meshing together quite nicely.
Mm,
It didn't always do that, but when it does, it worked really well. So in that sense, yeah, it is a survival game because everything
okay.
will try and murder you.
And is it a lot of like scavenging for supplies and that kind of thing?
Not. I mean, yeah, kind of, but again, not really, because it's not as much as I would have expected in a survival game.
Okay.
Has to be said because you haven't got those stats to look after.
Yeah.
It is just your weaponry, things that can give you stat bonuses like consumables and armor and stuff like that. So
Mm,
again, basic, but like you will desperately need to be looking out for stuff like that.
yeah. So do you feel like it's the survival game players that's the big target audience here? Like who is this game for?
I have been thinking about that.
Yeah.
I do think I think survival game players might be a little bit disappointed with like sort of the lack of micromanagement.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not sure. I'm not a survival game player, so I don't know. Maybe they like the micromanagement. If they do, maybe not this. But if they
Mm,
want just sort of the really punishing gameplay and just the feeling of being in like this world that's completely foreign to you that you don't understand and
mm,
doesn't understand you, yeah, I'd say it's definitely for them. If it's for Fallout players looking for British Fallout, I guess be very, very patient because I do think it's there.
yeah.
I do think it could be there if I got to play a little bit longer and got to talk to more of the NPCs. Again, just patience, and I guess I'd say to non-survival game players, like this could still be for you. Just and this is another thing is that you don't the way the game works, and from what I've been told, you can kill everyone or you can kill no one. So
Okay.
if you're not loving the combat at all, as I kind of wasn't at times, you can just sort of try your best to stealth your way out of it. So
Yeah. That's it's really interesting because like there's clearly a big world here. Like there's a lot of like strong world building happening, but there's so much friction to get there that the traditional fans of like narrative driven stuff have a sounds like have quite a barrier to overcome to get to the juicy lore. You
I
know what I
completely
mean?
agree. I completely agree, and that
Yeah.
was I was lucky in my first time I played as a Gamescom. I very quickly found the village, which took me a while to find in my second playthrough,
Mm.
and that's where I was like, oh, I really like what I'm seeing here. Like the narrative is really interesting. It's a very, I think I said this in my preview. It's a very like English brand of authoritarianism,
Mm.
which I would define as being it's like the same authoritarianism that we see in games like Fallout or like Bioshock, but like it's not even trying to sort of instill an American dream. It's just
Mhm.
like, no, stuff sucks, you're miserable, get used to it, like stiff upper
Yeah.
lip and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's very unique to no, I don't think enough games have explored that really. So and that's but then like you said, there's the barrier of entry to getting to that because I'm not sure how much it's going to focus on that because I think looking back at my footage, I actually managed to kind of evenly split my time between combat and doing story stuff.
Okay.
But it didn't feel that way because I felt like I was stuck in the wilderness fighting for my life for so long,
Yeah.
and really, it's like when the whole game is built upon mystery, I can't really say whether that's going to be worth it until I know what that mystery is, which I don't
Yes.
still. So it's I, and another way I describe it is like I don't even feel enticed at the beginning. I'm playing for the promise of being enticed later on,
Right.
which
Yeah. Bit of a
is
tough
a whole
sell.
other issue.
Yeah.
But
But
I
it
like
looks good.
it's gorgeous. That's
Yeah.
another thing. I mean, I'm going to be playing this on Series S probably, so I'm
Okay.
curious to see how it's going to play on that. But I played it on PC. I was stunned by how gorgeous it was.
Yeah.
It's but even just. I mean, you got the big details like the countryside, and then even the intricate details of the village. It's so authentic. I was like looking when I got to a pub, I was looking around like, oh my god, it's like actual pub because I don't live in England
Mm.
anymore, so I felt really like nostalgic. Um, so it's really faithfully recreated, and for that reason, for the level of care that's gone into this, I'm sort of in a I'll let them cook kind of thing.
Right.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not. It's hard to say whether I'm gripped yet. Like I'm curious, but there's enough here that I can see what they're putting down, and I am very eager to see whether this all coalesces into something a bit more coherent when I've got the
Yeah.
full experience.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like at this point from like your experience, I would say this sounds like a really tough sell, except that it's been on every like most anticipated 2025 list. Like I think on aesthetic alone, it's pulling people in regardless of
Yes,
what it actually is like to play it.
and I think that's well earned because like, the aesthetic is gorgeous. The premise is fascinating.
Mhm.
Even if I feel like I haven't, even after an hour and a half and another half an hour at Gamescom, I feel like I haven't even really like got into it all.
Mm.
Um, I it's ambitious. Like there's clearly ambition there, and I am very very curious to see whether it can sort of meet those ambitions that it set itself.
Yes. Me too. Wow, this is yeah. I definitely piqued my interest. This is definitely one to keep an eye on. Very not what I expected. Is it what you expected? I mean, I know you played it twice now, but
Um, I guess I was expecting to have more answers
yeah.
this time around. Although I did fare better than some of the people who tried to do like the full combat route and had no idea what was going on and no idea where
Yeah.
anyone was shooting them. So I do feel quite sorry for them. I'm curious to see what their takes on the game are going to be. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess the only last thing I'd say is that she's holding the story back is, and something that I might be better in the launch day version
Mm.
is, and this sounds like a small gripe, but when you're stuck in a lot of conversations, it's not. I really don't like it when games have that like a very noticeable pause after each line of dialogue,
Yes.
and to me, I immediately felt like I was sitting for a PowerPoint presentation, not a
Oh
conversation.
my god, yeah, yeah,
And
totally.
when it's meant to be an important conversation, I'm just like, oh my god, like especially when this is a break from the combat, which I was finding very like sort of brutal. I was like, no, just send me back to the combat, please. This is please. Um,
Yeah, sometimes that's like a translation thing. I think like the dialogue takes longer when it's in its native language, but this is an English game.
that's what I was thinking. I can give it allowances when it's other games, but with this, I'm just thinking, especially when the conversations are meant to be a reprieve from just aimlessly wandering around the countryside.
Hmm.
I do hope it wasn't with every NPC. It was one NPC in particular where it was really noticeable, and I was stuck on the conversation for probably over 5 minutes, and it was probably because of those pauses.
Huh.
So I do hope that's improves. But aside from that, like, yeah, I'm not put off. I'm curious. Um, I wish I could be more help to anyone who's curious about this game.
Yeah. It sounds like they needed to give you more time.
For sure. It was sitting in front of a PC after a long old journey to London. An hour and
Hmm.
a half was a lot. I could have done with a break and then come back to it for sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone there probably felt the same way, whether they enjoyed it or not. Especially if they enjoyed it. In fact, they
Right.
probably want to actually see some more because um I only really completed two quests, and one of them was because I intentionally did it like the evil way because it was the quicker one because I wanted to like sort of see more stuff as much as I
Hmm.
could. Um, so yeah, for sure we could have done with more time.
Hmm.
But it's out soon,
Yeah.
so
What's the
I'm
release date? Do you know?
March 27th, so not long at all.
Yeah, and day one Game Pass.
Day one Game Pass. So yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm
That's
very looking forward to see if the Series S can handle it. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I think that's massive for this game because, like, everything you're telling me is like I'm not so sure, but as soon as I hear day one Game Pass, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm gonna check it out. You know?
It's the perfect Game Pass game, is all I would
Yeah.
say. Like it reminds me of what was that really off-putting horror game which I ended up really loving, which was very divisive, and it came out in like 2022, I want to say, which was on Game Pass.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, and I can't think of the name.
Scorn, that's it.
Yes.
So Scorn is a very weird comparison to make because the games are completely different. They play differently, completely different genres, in fact. But I would compare it into the sense like if I wouldn't have bought Scorn,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean that with nothing but love for the developers. I loved that game eventually. I probably wouldn't have stuck with it, But like I was like, okay, it's on Game Pass. I haven't really got anything else to do. This dive in,
Yeah.
and that's a game that you very much have to sort of just immerse yourself in and unlock yourself. And I think Atomfall is going to be like that. So it is just in that regard like a perfect Game Pass game.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Cool. I'm looking forward to checking it out. You have a preview as well, right?
Yes, that will be going up. I guess today, if this video is going up on Friday. So yeah,
Perfect. We'll have that link down in the description. Thanks for watching our Atomfall preview. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and visit us at thegamer.com. That's the gamer, no spaces.